Yeah. Okay. I was just gonna ask if you.
Yeah.
Was that too much?
No, that was
No.
perfect. So what were your goals with the CLI component?
So I think I've actually probably answered
Yeah,
that.
you definitely did. You definitely did.
Actually, but I will say one other thing, which is that apart from I just want to clarify something. I actually have a goal of them learning something more in child development. So they're going to pick topics that I may not even be talking about in class. Like I don't talk about teen pregnancy in my class. I don't talk about incarcerated parents. I don't talk about I'm trying to think of another project. I don't talk about autism or mental. My class is not about I'm talking about mental health problems that children might have. So they're going to learn some content in areas that I might not actually ever be covering in class. So that's a content goal. But I really do have another goal, which is apart from the content of child development, which is the activism goal, is to just make students feel like they can have a sense of empowerment for themselves about connecting to community.
Okay.
Oh, good, we got through two.
Yeah. So how did that project and those goals play out in the classroom and beyond? Do you think the course met those goals?
I think that for a lot of students, I think it does meet. I think that I believe that I'm meeting the goals. But for every student, I'm not sure that every student feels like it meets the goals. I mean, when I look at the evaluations at the end, I think students, they say that the project is a lot of work because they literally have to do it for the entire semester. It's hard for them because it's not easy talking to people in the community. Getting a hold of people in the community is hard. Talking to people in the community is hard. And then coming up with a solution is not easy, and producing a product is not easy. And I also think that, I think students are much more comfortable going to the library and writing a paper because they know how to do that really well. This is something they don't really know how to do very well. But when I look at what most of them have been able to produce, even though they're I was saying to them, again, we're not solving world hunger, we're going to do something small. I think that many of the things that students have produced have been actually quite creative, and there are a number of organizations that have said to me, I'm very happy with what the students have done. So in that way, I think it's successful. I've also had students come and say to me after the fact, I really am happy that you made me do it, although I hated you when you made me do it. I don't know, I'm not sure they hated me, but they didn't like it at all. Because it really does move them out of their comfort zone. I don't think people, I think because you have to know that my project's slightly, are you guys doing anybody else's project, or am I the only one you're doing? Okay.
It's only you.
A lot of other community learning projects, I used to be the director of CLI. A lot of other community learning projects, the student works with one organization. And like when I used to teach my senior seminar, some of my students worked in organization A, some of my students worked in organization B, some of my students worked in here. There's not an organization or even a small number of organizations my students are working with that I've set up for them. They have to actually go out and make the contacts with these people, and a lot of times the folks don't, and the contacts change every year. That's why this is, people keep asking me who my community partners are. My community partners are like 150 people, so it's not like what you guys would typically be doing for somebody else's CLI project. But it's really frustrating because the people oftentimes, these are very busy people. There might be one person in an organization. The students have to email them or call them, or it might be a teacher in a classroom who's really busy. So I think they find that it's not only getting them out of their comfort zone, but it's actually very hard what I'm asking them to do, because it's not like there's an easy conduit in that way. And so I think that could become sometimes very frustrating for students, because it's not like going to the library and you look up 12 references and then you can write a paper and do something like that. So I hope it meets. I hope it's successful, but for some students it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Have to be honest.
You sort of also went into the fourth question, but is there anything else other than the students having to find their sponsor by themselves? Is there anything else that you could tell us that's not on the syllabus?
I give them a list of contacts ahead of time, but those contacts may or may not be relevant for their particular project.
Oh,
and then
okay.
they might learn stuff from those contacts who might lead them to other contacts and, go along that way. But maybe I didn't do that question correctly.
Oh, yeah. It says, what else should we know about the course that isn't on the syllabus? For example, where did you and your students go, and what else did they see beyond the classroom?
Okay. Well, I think that they see that people in the community are very busy, but they also see that people in the community, I think, are very open to, if they hit on the right person, they can actually really help somebody in that way, or they might come up and think about something that a person in the community didn't really know that they needed but might need in that regard. And I've had a few projects which actually have had a kind of interesting life of, continue their life. Like I had a student once whose topic was children in poverty, and she took her project and decided that after thinking about some issues that she narrowed her project down to children's lack of literacy, and so she talked to teachers in one of the schools that surrounds Trinity, and she realized that a lot of those children didn't have access to books, so she started this little program called Ready to Read. And the idea is to give every child in kindergarten and every child in first grade at least one book in the home. And so she raised the money for that through Joe's office in the community service office, and that program has actually continued now. It's been integrated into his shop in that way. So that's one of the things. It's an example of a success of something that actually continued on. But students sometimes do workshops for different organizations that the organizations actually use. I've had students who have constructed storybooks that the organizations have then used in their library about different sort of topics. I've had ones where students have created menus for how to eat healthy. And to incorporate children into the cooking process for parents, and so I keep wanting to say the firebox, but I'm trying to remember the name of that organization. For the kitchen and the firebox. Billings Forge. Thank you. Billings Forge. Has that organization has taken the cookbooks and given them out to their clients. So those are the examples of where the projects have actually had some life beyond this.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So how did the class change your students' views of relationships with Hartford?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't actually ever ask them that question. I ask them to reflect on what they learned from this project, but I haven't asked them how it changed their perception of Hartford. So I don't really have a good answer for that. Because for me, it's, I live in Hartford. One of the faculty members who actually lives and has actually lived in Hartford the entire time I've been at Trinity. So, I don't restrict my students just to the Hartford community, because there are some topics that really might be the greater Hartford community. Like once in a while I've had a student who does divorce, and it's really that's not a particular problem, and I'm not saying that people in Hartford aren't divorced, but I think in schools that's not something that is necessarily going to be top on the list of the teachers in the Hartford schools. I mean, it tends to be a bigger problem in the suburban schools, how children might deal with their situations of parental divorce and how that might lead to feelings of alienation or loneliness or different things like that. But so I've never had it as a goal in this particular class to change people's perceptions of Hartford. It's really more to empower them to think about wherever they live, they need to be involved in the community, and so Hartford tends to be the community that we're in, and so I want that to be the example for the rest of the community. But I'm really glad you asked me that question, because I'm going to ask that question this year.
Yeah.
No, it's a great question, and I actually feel somewhat stupid that I haven't asked it before.
Yeah, I did a CLI course, and I thought it.
Which one?
Well, I worked for the West End Civics Association.
Oh my God,
in
the West
Weka.
End.
So I was
How
part
was
of
that?
It was amazing. I was part of the Farmington Avenue. They planted trees and they redid the whole street.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I got to add food stamps for farmers markets. You can now buy farmers market produce with food stamps.
I go to the farmers market all the time.
And
so
they're amazing. I was part of that.
God,
which
that's
that was an experience in and of itself. But I really got to see Hartford in a different way,
in a total different light.
in the potential it really has, and the
I'm with
how
you.
How it you see past the surface.
Yeah.
You look at more of the people and it's really interesting.
I don't think that my project actually does that so much.
Ours is more urban studies oriented.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm so happy to hear what you say as somebody who lives in the West End and somebody who shops at the market and somebody who wishes that students would in fact see Hartford as, it's kind of like a little jewel, even with its grittiness. And just as I know you're tape recording this, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's all right, I don't care. I'm just saying, I actually didn't look for any jobs. Now this is a little I don't know where you guys are from.
Not here.
I'm
Florida.
from Venezuela.
Oh my God! So this will be. Where are you from?
I'm from Florida.
Florida. Okay, well, you'll appreciate this. So when I went to I grew up in New York and went to graduate school in New Hampshire. I didn't apply for any jobs west or south of Washington, D.C. Now, I'll admit that I had a little Southern prejudice, so I'll admit that. I did actually my sabbatical at Emory, so I kind of got over my Southern prejudice. And I didn't really the Midwest was just like a blur to me. And I really didn't want to go to California because I thought I'd spend my entire life in California defending the East Coast because, everybody who goes to California thinks that California is like the dream place. And so I did want to say, no, I actually really like the East Coast. So I admit that, but I'll say to you, I absolutely admit that that's a real prejudice on my part that, I had this East Coast mentality. But I did get job offers from places that were in rural areas, college towns in rural areas. And I have to say that one of the things that appealed to me the most about Trinity was that it was in a kind of, I lived actually on Broad Street for my first 7 years here. It's in a kind of nitty-gritty urban environment. And for me, there's something, when my parents drove up and saw that where I lived on Broad Street, and let me tell you, Broad Street was actually somewhat better then than it is. Well, it's gone through several cycles, but my father said, "You're not living here." And I said, "No, Dad, I actually am living here. This is my apartment, and I'm definitely an adult." And he just thought, I was going to get shot the first week I was here or something like that. So I think that there's something wonderful about the nitty-gritty of Hartford, even though it's rough around the edges. It's really a jewel. I mean, it's got a lot of problems, but there's really what you said. There's really a really nice core in that way. And I think what I would love is for students to recognize that it's not just a matter of can you help the poor people out there, because that's never been my notion about community learning, but rather how do you see yourself as being part of a community and improving a community, but doesn't mean that the community is horrible and you're making it a little bit better in that way. And so that's, I'm not saying my project actually does that. What your project really did do that, and I think that's really, very rewarding in that regard. And as when I used to direct community learning, I sometimes thought, if every student had an experience like you had, the notion of the fences wouldn't be a psychological barrier, in that way. They could be a physical barrier, that's fine, but it's really the psychological barrier that many, you guys obviously don't have that because you wouldn't be even taking this class if you had that. Plus, you've ventured very far away, but you far away as well from, you're not from Connecticut, New York, or Massachusetts, or Pennsylvania, the states that most of our students come from. So, you already have bridged an important psychological sort of barrier in that regard. But I always think it's much more psychological than it is physical for students leaving the campus, because the only place they want to go is West Farms Mall, in that regard. And it's not kind of seeing what Hartford, what are the good things that Hartford has to offer in that way. I'm sorry, I know that was a little tangent.
Oh, that's fine.
So let's go back to
So you want to ask the fifth question?
What do you think the community partners, even though there are like a lot of them, do you have any specific examples of what one of them could have gotten from the course?
So that, you mean how have they benefited from it? Is that what that question is asking? I'd rather be honest with you guys, and for this, I think in this regard, I think some of my community partners benefit because I do try to get my students to ask people what are the problems that they see, and there has to be somebody who's willing to accept their solution or their product. So the person has to at least think at some superficial level that this will be beneficial to me, because literally they write the cover letter, even though I get the projects, they write the cover letter to the person, and then I send them out in January, when the semester ends and everything. But I think that, it really varies in terms of what the quality of the product is, and how closely they've been able to identify somebody who really needs to have something done. So here's a good example. I don't know how this is going to come out this semester. I have two wonderful students who are working. They identified they are interested in school-related issues, and so one of the issues is around school choice. And so, Jack Doherty has been very, very helpful in saying that there's been, a lot of parents don't really understand with the whole magnet school system. How do you choose a school? How do you make various kinds of decisions? Now, there are supposedly groups that help parents make those choices, but those groups don't seem to be particularly tuned into actually what is it that parents really need, which is, I think, there's always that kind of tension sometimes between organizational groups and what individual parents or even could be economic, what business owners need versus what the neighborhood revitalization groups say they need. So they actually have interviewed a number of parents, and then they went to this school choice open house and talked to parents when they were there to say, what are the problems you're encountering? And so they're, I'm hoping, I'm not positive yet, that they're going to be working with HMTCA, because what happens is all of the schools go out and they send a representative from the school to these choice fairs, and that way parents can come and talk to the representatives of the different schools and say, do I want my kid, why should my kid go to this school versus this school? Because you have to rank the schools that you want if you want to do any kind of school choice. And so what I'm hoping is, this is a really good example of, we know there's a problem out there, but it's been very hard for them to figure out who they could do a product for, even though, because you can't just do a product for a group of parents because you don't even know who the parents are. You know what I'm saying? So it's a real challenge, but I'm hoping that they're going to be able to hook up with HMTCA, the person there, and if that person says, it'd be nice if I had flyers. It would be nice if I had something, my students could produce those and give them to them in that regard. So sometimes I can be really concrete because a community partner says, I don't have X. Can you do X for me? Or like, could you create a public service announcement or something like that? Oftentimes it's the student saying, could you use X? And then sometimes that's useful and sometimes it's not. I mean, I think the community partners, like when you help to get, to make sure that people could use, could use the money that the
food stamps?
The food stamps. I mean, that's a really concrete solution, but you had to go through an organization because you don't know who all the people are who have
the
food stamps.
Of all of it.
Do you know what I'm saying? And so that's sometimes for me the problem. Even though they have a partner, it will depend on how much that person really needs X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when you guys look on my, you guys have access to, or maybe did I give you guys access to Moodle? That's where all the products are.
Oh, then do you want? Should we get
Jack,
access?
Could you? I think I asked him if you guys. I mean, I just have to give you guys access to Moodle so you don't get my 55 million emails that come from me to my class. But I'm happy to give you guys, because that is where all of the old products are.
Okay.
I've posted them all on Moodle.
Okay. Yeah, that could be very helpful. There's 10
years worth of
stuff.
And that's why I was so excited about what you guys are doing, because I want to get them off of Moodle and put them into some place where they could be seen much better, or which ones would work and which ones wouldn't work. I just put them up there so students can see the past products.
Yeah.
Unlike I haven't been able to create my own WordPress site like Jack does for everything,
Yeah.
I'm still low tech here.
So this last question, is there anything else you would like to add or that we didn't think to ask? Like you've added a lot on top of everything too.
Yeah, I think it's been nice talking to you
guys.
Yeah. Have you done a community learning project yet?
I think so. Did you
with Alto-Lash?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that with Alto-Lash.
You did that with Alto?
And
were you in that class too?
I actually.
You're in that class now. Who are you working with?
Connecticut Association for Human Services.
Oh, tell me about that.
I was just helping around the office for the first month.
Yeah.
And now I'm helping to do a policy report to help bring debt-free college to Connecticut.
Oh,
or,
that's
some
fantastic.
For that.
That'd be really cool. Yeah, I actually continued. So I did one semester with Alto-Lash, and then the next semester they invited me back, and they were happy to have.
And did you do it as an independent study, or
no, not even as an independent study, just on my own, without any credit. And actually now one of the people I met through that organization is offering me a real estate job next semester, which is really cool. Yeah, because he works with the board sometimes.
What's his name?
It's Rick something. Oh. But he lives in the West End, and he sells houses in the West End too.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, which would be cool.
So are you a senior?
Yeah, I'm a senior. I'm graduating next year.
So you're gonna you'll be staying.
Oh no, sorry. This
summer.
It's
just for the spring.
Yeah, just for the spring.
Okay. Are you going back to Venezuela?
Well, no, I actually live in New York City.
Oh, okay.
Because Venezuela is not in a good place right now. But hopefully one day I really want to go back there and change it.
I know.
Which is why I'm studying this, which is really
So is your major urban studies?
Yeah, urban studies. It wasn't originally urban studies. It was the usual econ and comp sci, and then.
I'm so happy.
And then I took urban econ, and I was wow, I really like urban studies, and then I changed my entire schedule sophomore spring, I think. Yeah. which
So
is
this
good.
is good. So
So
what do you
good for me.
So what are you thinking about doing when you leave?
Probably some investing, like real
Okay.
estate investing,
Okay.
and afterwards.
So is your whole family in up here?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. They were able
Well,
to
not
leave?
all of them. Like
Okay.
just my mom and sister and I.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Okay.
were very lucky.
Yeah, because it really is.
It's
I mean,
really.
it breaks my heart
I
to
know.
hear how I'm sure it
It's
breaks your
hard.
heart doubly.
Yeah,
but
and
just
my
to hear-
family's completely involved with all of it, like the opposition, trying to bring democracy back, you know.
I'd love to talk to you sometime more
Yeah.
about it, to
Oh.
actually learn more about it. I mean, I know what I read in the paper and everything, but it really does.
There's a lot of levels to it.
I'm
and
sure
it's,
there is.
it's,
I'm very serious about it.
yeah.
I'd love sometime to talk to you
And
more about
I'm
it.
glad to have it.
Yeah, because it just seems like it does seem like there are a lot of different levels, and I mean, what's so sad to me is that the potential.
Yeah.
Well, plus, I mean, like people are starving.
Yeah, we should look like Dubai, and now instead we have people starving in the middle of the street.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's corruption.
I mean,
Everything.
You talk about a waste of You talk about wasting your natural resources instead of elevating the life's sort of the life, the positive for people in the country in that way, and what you could have done.
I know.
I mean, that's what's
a
heartbreaking.
crime. It's a
what
crime.
It is what you could have done for the less educated folks to bring up the standard of living is really sad.
Yeah, and that was the platform of the socialist government of Chavez.
Of course,
and he did exactly what everyone expected was when someone appeals to populists.
Yep.
And he appealed to like everyone that lived in informal communities, and obviously they're going to be like,
it was a platform of
it was a platform. It was a very
of the idea that we're going to we're going to create equality, and it's an interesting example how people become despots.
Exactly.
They believe their own rhetoric, but the rhetoric is about themselves, not about the people that they want to help. I mean, I can say from a psychological viewpoint, it's I mean, even a benevolent dictator is still a dictator, and he wasn't even a benevolent dictator.
Wasn't. Like, what you have examples of dictators like Pinochet in Chile, who completely he was violent and he was brutal. But look at Chile now. It is the most successful Latin American country in the world, and Venezuela, which used to be like a very conservative pocket of Latin America, now. And it was sort of because of the conservatives there that people were like, oh, I can't move up in my social class. I need someone new to come in and a clean slate, and that's when Chavez took the opportunity and came out.
Well, this is what I'm ignorant about. Is there? But I kind of intuited this, but I could be totally wrong. Is there a great clash in terms of ethnic between who gets called the elites and who in terms of like ethnicity and things like that?
Not in terms of ethnicity, but in terms of who you're friends with. There's a lot of patronage.
Okay.
And that's why a lot of people couldn't start businesses because they didn't know the right people. And it wasn't necessarily a racist thing. Maybe it began as that, but now it's not that. I think it's 20% white and 80% mestizo. Yeah. So it's very even.
But didn't Chavez represent the mestizos?
He didn't.
No, but wasn't that his appeal?
Yeah. His appeal was the people that were subjugated by families that kept their own thing, which is I'm actually writing a paper right now, and I might write a thesis about it. I don't know. I might do it next semester about how it is not their fault. It's not the people right now that voted for Chavez. It is the people in the 70s and 80s that subjugated mestizos, or people that could have had an opportunity to make a name for themselves and create their own businesses, and instead kept all the wealth to themselves and improved their communities instead of the slums. and that's why they needed an outlet like Chavez to come in and provide for the slums. But Chavez didn't necessarily do that. He just
it definitely does.
gave free oil to people and created like a disaster.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an interesting notion of not, and again, I don't know all of the specifics, but it is a kind of interesting notion of a kind of blindness to the wrong kind of notion of socialism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, I mean, clearly socialism has worked quite effectively in Western Europe in a very positive way. I mean, but it was an allegiance to, I think, the wrong sort of notion of it in that regard.
Also, the differences, like in sort of the third world or like in a developing country like Venezuela, you have people that aren't necessarily, so they're scared, they want their money to be safe, and those are the people that are usually better off. And once there's like a threat to their lifestyle, they just move. They like they're not tied down to a place.
They don't have to stay.
Exactly. They can move wherever they want.
You have a real flight
of capital.
Yeah.
So no tax base and
that's
then.
Why it's good you took those economics courses.
Yeah. Very. I'm pretty well rounded as a training student, which
I think that's really good.
I'm excited to.
So we didn't talk about you for a second.